wanted to quickly leave this off on one other subject, which is Bitcoin. You mentioned that it's not surprising to see, a massive increase overnight in Steam. Well, I think it goes without saying after watching Bitcoin go from, about the beginning of November, $6,000 to the beginning of December, about 18, I think peaking around 19,000 US dollars, which is unthinkable. Just the level of growth is unbelievable. Of course, people on the news have been pushing really hard. It's a bubble. People on the news have been pushing really hard saying, well, some terrorists might get funded with Bitcoin. Meanwhile, 99.99% of all currency given to terrorists is in fiat, so it's not like we're going to go and ban that. The point is, Bitcoin is an incredible innovation that is threatening the fabric of the establishment, and I wanted you, Stephen, to quickly go into the recent massive growth we've seen with Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not surprised. I remember having a Skype conversation with you sometime in the summer, Josh, and it was around about 2,600. And the reason for the call was that it was actually coming down. It was actually coming down. And I remember saying to you at the time, well, if you're in it for the long haul, Bitcoin, as far as I'm concerned, is $1 million plus, and I've said this for a while and I will say it all the way up to $1 million, And the thing is, what actually is happening is you're getting these spikes up and you're getting these pullbacks down, these spikes up, these pullbacks down. But what actually is happening in real terms, the higher highs obviously getting higher, but the lows are getting higher than the previous. The lows are getting higher than the previous higher highs. So you're getting this step situation. And it's quite interesting to see the speed that it's going up has actually surprised me. I always said all along that I always like to see a nice gradual growth, and I put out the presentation that I did yesterday, and I actually did the presentation with a graph that actually said by the end of 2017, we will see a cryptocurrency market with a market cap of 500 billion. Well, of course, by the time I put the presentation, it was around about 521 billion. So the presentation, albeit about 4 days old, was out of date. And at the moment, we're punching through 537 billion. Well, that's 37 billion more than my target price for the end of the year. And put it in perspective, 37 billion, that would effectively have been twice the size of the market cap of the entire cryptocurrency market this time last year. So, these price spikes that we're going to get, Bitcoin at the moment is doing exactly as I expect it to do. And people will say, it's $18,000. It goes to 20, and then it'll come down, and it might come down to 16,000. Well, of course, people will say, oh, it's 20,000, it's crashed down to 16. Well, not really, because 20,000 to 16,000 is no different than 2,000 to 1,600. It's exactly the same. Yeah. And of course, they'll get a point where Bitcoin, it'll be all over the news. Bitcoin has just crashed by $50,000. Yeah, but it was up at 250,000, So when it gets to 250 and it crashes down to 200,000, then the whole world's caving in as far as the mainstream media concerned. Yeah. No, you're gonna get it.
Yeah, well, it's all over the news lately. You can't really turn on the television, which I try not to do as it is, but you can't turn on the television without some fear-mongering about Bitcoin, something about money laundering, blah, 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 blah. It's just this, lack of acceptance by the establishment. Meanwhile, the establishment, much like gold and silver, they're buying it up. And with that said, just leaving it off with one more question here, Stephen, are you at all concerned about the vast amount of growth, though? And what do you think about, because there's such a huge amount of growth all at one point, I know it's not a bubble in the sense where it's, the derivatives market manipulated into oblivion, but there does seem to be a ridiculously high level of growth. And with that said, what do you say to all those that are flocking over to Bitcoin Cash instead of Bitcoin?
Right. Okay. Well, as far as the growth goes, at the moment we're at point five of a trillion. Yeah. I'm actually projecting that by the end of 2022, the cryptocurrency market will be in a region of about 50 trillion. And what actually is happening, the reality that is really happening in the background, Josh, is that there's a migration from the old system, which is the stocks and shares, the bonds, the manipulation, the futures market, and we haven't even touched on the futures market. Well, all these markets are all going to be obsolete in the future. There will be no futures market. Now, that might come as a complete shock to people. People will say, well, you lost the plot last year when you said that Bitcoin was going to hit $1 million. You've certainly lost the plot this year, because now you're telling us that there's going to be no futures market. There is going to be no futures market, because what's going to happen, the true price discovery is going to come from the blockchain. So what's going to happen in the future, Josh, is that the mechanism for evaluating the goods and services that are traded throughout the world, and everybody knows the term GDP, the gross domestic product, that gross domestic product will be evaluated on the blockchain, and that gross domestic product will have true price discovery on the blockchain. There'll be no exchanges, there'll be no clearing houses, there'll be no central banks, there'll be no regulating authorities and ratings agencies, and more importantly, there'll be no futures market. Everything will be on the blockchain, and then at that point, people will say, well, I never saw the cryptocurrency market hitting 50 trillion. Well, yeah, because what's going to happen in the future, everything that is evaluated to establish the gross domestic product, which currently stands today at around about 75 trillion globally, is all going to be done by cryptography and on the blockchain. So in the future, people really, once they understand what blockchain is, they'll understand where we are today, and we haven't even scratched the surface. 0.5 of a trillion is pocket change in the overall scheme of things.
Yeah, we've been trying to tell people here at WAM for a while now that this is just a sign of the death of the debt-based derivatives, manipulated markets, the debt-based manipulated fiat systems around the world, the central banking cartels. People don't want their life to be centralized. People want to be decentralized. People naturally love the free market and the demand of individuals and the competition of currencies, rather than this one legal tender set price and manipulated currency shoved down our throats and pushing us all into poverty. But just quickly, Stephen, there's a huge flock to Bitcoin Cash. Can you go into why are so many people saying that Bitcoin Cash is going to replace Bitcoin?
Right. Okay. I think a lot of it, Josh. The reason why Bitcoin Cash seems to be getting a lot of interest at the moment is that people are actually seeing the explosive growth in Bitcoin. And of course, if you actually look at the two, what's going to happen, and really it's now starting to happen already. People are kept comparing how many Bitcoin Cash can you get for one Bitcoin. Well, of course, there's a ratio there, and let's say it's 4-1. Let's keep it simple. Let's say it's 4-1. Well, if all of a sudden Bitcoin shoots up and then it becomes 5-1, 5 Bitcoin Cash for one Bitcoin, people will flock into Bitcoin Cash because they feel as though they're getting a better relationship. And what's actually going to happen as the price goes up, you're going to get these 4-1, 5-1, 6-1, 3-1, 5-1, 4-1. And as these prices, like everybody measures, I mean, everybody always says gold to silver ratio. Gold to silver ratio, 15-1 historically. Well, 15-1, why the hell are we at 70-1? We're at 71 because of the manipulation. What is actually happening with the cryptocurrencies is that people price things in Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the reserve. Bitcoin is the one that people fix against. So what actually is going to happen as the price goes up, how many Litecoins can you buy for one Bitcoin? How many Steam can you buy for one Bitcoin? How many Bitcoin Cash can you buy for one Bitcoin? And what actually is going to happen, people are going to swap And people are going to swap because, at the moment it's 4-1, 5-1, I'll jump in, 3-1, I might not be as keen, and the price is going up. So I think people are actually naturally flocking to Bitcoin Cash. Not because it's any better, and I don't want to be sending out the wrong sort of signals here, but not because it's any better, but because the feel factor is that it looks about right and it looks cheap. So, I always say Bitcoin will always be that dominant one, and you might get the ones going up and then suddenly coming back down and going back up, but overall they're going up, So I can't really say why, apart from psychologically people are pumping into certain ones, and there's always a magical figure, when a cryptocurrency gets over a certain amount, 100 million, 500 million, 1 billion, suddenly it'll trigger. When Steam, I've said all along, when Steam gets over 1 billion, then it'll become on people's radars, and once it's on people's radars, that's where you're going to see these explosive prices, and it's nothing to do with anything technical about the blockchain or anything technical about the cryptocurrency. There'll always be an element of people saying, "Oh, that looks cheap," and then all of a sudden everybody piles into it.
Yeah, I actually had someone come to me not that long ago saying that they couldn't afford to buy Bitcoin. They wanted to get into cryptocurrency, so they were looking at Dash because they couldn't afford, at the time it was $11,000. And I said, hey, you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. You can put the equivalent amount of money in Bitcoin. A lot of people are just getting into the markets. It's a good sign because there's a new a vast adoption rate from the average person, whether you be a soccer mom or a school coach or whatever you want to call it. There are a whole bunch of different kinds of people that are coming into cryptocurrency for the first time, and it's a beautiful thing. There are some issues I find just with transaction waiting times because the market's still in its infancy, so when you're waiting 5 days to make a transaction and it's stuck there, and sometimes they just get denied some of the transactions because the fees aren't big enough. There are definitely problems, but every market starts with problems and it grows with solutions, and I'm sure we will see that in the near future. I really hope so, because I like to be able to move from different wallets and not have to wait days. But I mean, that's really the only downside I see at the current moment, and I think that the future is bright for cryptocurrencies. I think that people that are just getting in now are going to see a big difference in the coming years, in my opinion. And just the amount of dividends that people have made since January is unbelievable. So, Stephen, I really appreciate you joining us again. It's always great. I could go on for all day talking with you about these things, but for the sake of this video, we're going to end it here. But make sure to check out Stephen Kendal at Stephen Kendal at steemit.com. We'll put it up on the screen there for you. And until next time, thank you very much, Stephen.
You're welcome, and very Merry Christmas to you, your family, and all your viewers, Josh.
You as well. Like what you see here at WAM, don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon, we can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so overwhelmingly demonetized and censored by YouTube as the Anti-Defamation League comes in and flags all of our content as hate speech. You can also find me at Josh Sigurdson at steemit.com. That's steemit.com, the future of social media, where you get paid in the upvote of your post via Steem, the cryptocurrency. You can also find our Bitcoin address in the description and the comments below, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And don't forget to come on down to Anarchapulco in Acapulco, Mexico in February, one of the best events of the year, and you can save money on your tickets by typing in promo code WAM. That's WAM. We'll leave the link below for you, and until next time, don't forget to subscribe. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.